There were also some questions about why do we need to do a game design document in a programming course? And that's a fair question. Obviously, it's not a writing course. It's not, it's not, a thought experiment where you're just trying to think up a game. I was using the game design document as a tool for you guys to plan out what you want to make. In my experience, did you need to follow it? Not necessarily, but if you answered all of the criteria that was on that template in whatever way that you wanted, that's fine. I wanted you guys to use a game design document just so that you had a solid idea of what you wanted to do, like how you would do it, how many different enemies you would have, what those enemies would do. I was really looking for details with that, and a lot of you did a really good job with that. And again, I didn't want you to think that that like the game design document is a large part of this course. It's important for sure, but obviously you have to get the programming of your game down. You have to get content out, right? So I thought it was just a good way to plan ahead rather than being in front of your keyboard with Unity open and asking yourself, well, what is this thing going to do, and what is that thing going to do, and then you run into, oh, this doesn't work with this. How do I fix it? You get a lot of those questions when you're developing, and that takes up a lot of time. Just trying to get that I could make in a game that was interesting. Yeah, I can understand that. I would lean towards a game that you can make, because as you progress, you'll be able to build that game up for what you want it to be interesting, right? Like you can take the fundamentals that you learn in this course and then apply it to the game and then build upon it and everything like that. So yeah, just do what you can and challenge yourself. I feel like that's a good policy to have. And again, I always felt like a game design is a living document. You're constantly changing it with your development. So whatever ideas that you have on your game now, they may change after this semester. They may change during the semester when you say, oh, maybe this will work better, or I have this working, maybe this would be more interesting to do. So, I'm okay with that. That's fine. That's good to do, because you're critically thinking about the game and what makes it fun, and you're turning your game into something that's enjoyable. Do I want you to scrap everything and start from scratch? No, because I don't think we have enough time for that. But iterating on your idea is very important, because that's how you make interesting games, and how you make games work correctly. Any other comments, concerns, anything? Well, how much do you want to fulfill? That depends on the amount that each person makes, right? I would say the core game mechanics, and I guess the main characters or objects in your game, like enemies, players, that have the base functionality. So, say for instance, you want to make an RPG or something like that. So you at least have the ability to switch, to have some sort of combat. One person goes, the next person goes. You have at least some different characters to vary. So the criteria is different between each game, right? Because every genre is different. But as long as you have the game mechanics down to say, okay, I know how to do this, and then you can replicate it for other things. That's what I'm looking for. It's always good to play test your games. It will be graded by me. I was thinking, you know, the last day we would just have everybody share their screens and just show the games that they made. I would say play test with anybody that you can. I wasn't making it a requirement just because that gets kind of hairy, you know, in the discussions and stuff. But I mean, yeah, I think that's the best course of action. We're able to run our code by, yeah, absolutely. You can run your code by me. You know, in the syllabus I mentioned, you can definitely ask me questions on, you know, certain things that aren't working. What I don't want to end up doing is just debugging all of your code, you know, and you know, I don't want to do it, and it doesn't really help you at all to try to figure out how things aren't working. I will have a rubric up soon for the final game. I kind of wanted to get everybody's opinion on like group projects and stuff before I finalized it. So yeah, I'll have that out soon as well. Trying to think if there's anything else I need to talk about. I don't think so. I'm just, somebody had brought up the idea of doing group projects for this course, and I kind of just took a straw poll here to see who was interested in that, and there didn't really seem to be a resounding yes, we needed group projects. So I think we're just going to keep it as is, just individual projects. Look, I'm going to shift gears here. Go ahead. So I'm sharing. All right, there's my chat. It's like everything like just goes away. It's so weird. All right, so hopefully you can see my Unity project. I don't know if a lot of you, I know a lot of you weren't here for the Saturday makeup lecture, but there was a video about the project here. I'm just gonna run through it fairly quickly, just so that you guys have some idea of what we were talking about. Also, I'm gonna take a step back as well, just to go over some things. So, okay, here's your Unity setup here, right? You have your scene in the center, you have your hierarchy on the left, and your inspector on the right. Okay. Everything that is within this scene will show up in this hierarchy. And these are called game objects on the left. All right, I'm just kind of trying to do a high-level recap, you know, so that everybody's on the same page. So for each of these game objects, so we have one here called player. On the right, the inspector gets populated with what's called components, which essentially are like the settings or, you know, the functionality of whatever this game object needs. Okay. A script is a component. It can be added as a component by either dragging the script onto the player or going to add component and then just putting in the name of the script. Okay. So what we were doing, we have this player here, right? It's just a cube, just a different colored cube. So how we got him to be blue is that I made a material and named it player. All right, and then you can change the color over here. You change it in the color wheel, and then you change the lightness and darkness of it, and then you hit OK. Right. And then once you have it the way that you want it, there's a whole bunch of other settings, but I mean that's the basic of how to change the color. You essentially drag that onto the whatever game object you want. In this instance, it's the player. Okay, that's, I mean, materials are also how you put, you know, textures on. There's, I mean, a whole other section for, you know, making art, animations, and stuff that we'll probably get into in the later weeks. Because I feel like that's not really a priority. It's more of the, you know, getting started. So we have this player in the game object. What we could do with this game object is right click it and wait a minute. You just drag it, right? Yeah. So when you drag it down, you see the player is there, but the icon is different. Icon is a solid box. Well, now it is a solid box, and also the player is now blue. We've created a prefab with that game object. So essentially, we're saying, okay, this is an object that I want to keep so that I can keep using it. It's essentially, we created a template. And then we can create more game objects with that prefab. See, it just 1, 2. It's all the same. That has the same settings. They're all blue. You just a prefab. We can change individual settings in here. Let's see. Yeah, you can change individual settings in here, and then I believe you can also, you can set it somewhere where you can apply prefab changes to everything. I'd have to find it again. I thought it was up at the top, but there's a way to apply any changes that you do to one. Yeah, that's what I thought it was, right? And make prefab, but for some reason I don't see it. I mean, again, if you just drag a regular game object down to assets, it'll create a prefab for you. But there is a setting in here somewhere that will allow you to apply whatever settings that you create for this individual prefab to be for all of them. Yeah, go ahead. I believe there's also breakouts in this little chat. Okay, so I'll remove this. So on this player object, I have a script that I made called movement player movement. And it's pretty simple. So I was going through basic movement. We have a Boolean here called going right, and it equals input.getKey, key code right arrow. So essentially it's saying if hit true if the right arrow is being clicked. And then say if going right, so if this is set to true, transform that dot position. So we're transforming the position of the player in this direction, which vector 3 right, which is a pre-filled of basically this three-dimensional point, times time.delta time and speed. So by multiplying it by time.delta time, it essentially will go faster because the way that they updates, it goes slower than you would like. So it actually multiplies it by time rather than the frame rate. And then we also have this speed multiplier. So we use this to ramp up the speed when we want. We have this speed here, and we can make it go faster or slower than we want. All right, and we do this for all directions. So up, down, left, right. And then when you run it, yeah, I can post this file. Don't mind the other blocks. I'll explain those in a minute. But you see the blue is moving around. Okay. And along with this player movement, we also have another one for keycode.space. Yeah, I'll post it. Don't worry. So once the space bar is down, we have this get component Rigidbody Add Force. We're basically adding a force in the upwards direction once we hit the space. This if statement is to prevent us from being able to jump after a certain height. So if our height is less than 0.05 from the ground, then we can't hit, we can't double jump, essentially. Yeah. The camera's really far away, but you can see it kind of like jump a little bit there. And again, we also have another variable that we threw in there, if I can see, called force. So we crank that to 500. He's jumping high. And then you can hear me hit the space bar. It's not jumping any other times other than when I hit the ground. So, okay. And then we have this other object here called Powerup. I'm sure you can figure out what that does. But basically, it's just a block that has a script on it called collectible. And if you look into the code for that, so it has this on trigger enter. Basically, when this is a function built into Unity that occurs when something is collided with it. So collider other references what the other object is, which would be the player colliding with this box, right? So we can say if other.tag equals player. What does that mean? Well, if you look at the player, there's a tag up here, and we've set it to player. Tags are really important because you can set multiple different types of an item to a tag and then search for everything that has that tag. So let's say that you have a tank in your game, and then you have a soldier in your game. Like all of these enemies, different types of enemies that you need to search for. All you have to do is put it as an enemy tag, and then you can search for all of them and then do whatever you need to. You can also add tags. So new tag, enemy. You go back to your player. Boom. You have an enemy right there. So really useful. So you say if other.tag equals player, destroy this game object. Essentially, it's just destroying the box once we collide with it. As you see, green box is gone once I collide with it, right? That's pretty useful, right? You can use that for, you know, like coins or something. And within this collision, you can also have, you know, add, you know, 10 points. You can do whatever you need to with this collider. So one other thing in this project is this box called spawner. And as you probably know, it spawns enemies, but let's take a look at how it does that. So this gets kind of hairy. Is one of those things you can probably look up, but we're using Ienumerator. Oh, hold on one second. So an Ienumerator is used. Hold on one second. Used when essentially you need to, you know, pause an iteration, you know, using a routine of some sort. And this yield return is a statement that returns, you know, each element at one time, or I'm sorry, one at a time. When a yield return statement is reached in the iterator method, the expression is returned, and the current location in the code is retained. So it just continues where it leaves off, essentially. So let's see here. We have this Boolean of stop, right? And we're pretty much just using this to continuously run this loop. So, because we're not setting anything to stop. Stop by default is always false, and so while not stop, do this loop. And we're using something here called random.range, which is a built-in math function that determines a random number between two ranges. So we have rand enemy equals random.range 0 to 2. So basically it is holding a number between, I believe, 1 and 2. I don't think it's 0 in there. I mean, it might be 0, but. So then we're going to be picking where the enemy is going to be spawned. So we're creating a new vector 3, which is going to be the spawn position. And then we're setting those values. So we're creating a random range between minus spawn values at x and then spawn values at x. So basically just two different ranges. We don't want to mess with the y, and then two different ranges on the z axis. Okay, and then once we have that position, then we're going to be creating an enemy and place it in that new position that we just created. So how do we do that? Use instantiate. That's what you use to create a game object. So we have this game object array up here called enemies, which is essentially our container for all of the enemies that we have. And then rand enemy is this random number. So we're picking one of the enemies that we've created based off this random number, and then using the spawn position, which we randomly generated, and then transforming it to that position. Okay. So if you go back into Unity, we have this spawner. You look down to where the script is. These are the spawn values that it was looking for. So basically, with these values is how wide of a spread the spawner will have, right? So let's say 20, spawn most weight, spawn least weight. These will is basically our timer between how long to spawn these things. And this is used in the update. Okay, and then when you run it, so you'll notice that there's a purple one way back there, and then you have a red one and a purple one. So it's randomly giving you whatever enemies that you have in your list. And that list is down in here. It has that enemies array that we created. We gave it a size of 2, and then element 0, element 1. Then you just set it to whatever enemies that you want in there, and then those enemies will be spawned. Okay. Any questions about any of that? I guess not. So I'm gonna shift into the book a little bit here. They have these snippets of code that I believe it does go into UI. But that I'll probably spend 1 week just talking about UI, because I mean that can get pretty interesting. Again, this. Yeah, no joke. Guys, give me 1 second. I'll be right back, okay? Hey everyone, sorry about that. I am back. Sorry, I'm just step again. Okay. So I'm going to create another C# script called enemy AI. First, I'm going to declare some variables up here. Transform player. I'll explain this in a second. Just so I'm going to try to create a script that will have these enemies that are being generated start walking towards the player. Okay. So first, public transform player is essentially the variable that will be what this script will be looking at, which is the player. The walking distance is what distance will the enemy walk towards the player, right? I guess it's just like a cone of distance. And then smooth time is the time it'll take the enemy to complete the journey between its position and the player's position. And then the smooth velocity is just sort of the velocity of the enemy. Okay, so we're going to come down here to the update. Oh, you know what? Just want to make sure I'm recording. Yeah, okay. Right, so first, transform. Hold on. So transform.look@player rotates the transform so the forward vector points at the target's current position. Calculate the distance between the enemy and the player. So we're going to use the vector 3 here, and then the distance. That'll give us a distance between 2 points, which is our position, and the player's position. Okay. Okay. Distance between the enemy and the player is less than the walking distance. And then refill the player. Dot smooth damp. Smooth damp it's a way of moving. I believe it smooths out the velocity and everything. It's just an easy way to move between two objects. Different position, player dot position. Here's the velocity that we'll be using and the time. So yeah, transform that position is the current position. The player position is the position we're trying to reach. This is the current velocity. So yeah, the current velocity, and the smooth time is the time it'll take to reach the target. Smaller value will reach the target faster, right? That should be all we need for this. So you come back into here. I'm gonna create an empty, actually not an empty one. I'm gonna create a new cube here. Like over there. I'll go through this material real quick. Create material. We'll make it like purple. And then we're going to put that on the enemy. Oh, didn't save, I don't think. Why aren't you working? Oh, it was just above the floor that I made here. Okay, we're going to add the new scripts. Called it, yeah, enemy AI. What? Yeah. This is bugging me. Also, a neat little thing about Visual Studio is that if you rename I keep losing my window. It's going to be 10F no matter what the distance is. No, you should be able to change it because it is a public variable up there. Oh, there it is. Okay. Should be, right? Yeah, so we have those variables here, right? 10, 10, and we can change them on the fly. You could have it go that way. The question was, so will random generated spawn point enemies move at different rates depending on where they are spawned? Well, I guess, yeah, they would, because they are different distances, and being that we have this smooth time, it has to reach there by a certain time. So yes, it would. Oh, I think. Okay. Yeah. So in order for this to work, remember we have this player variable. Right now it's not set to anything. So now you have to set it to the player object. And it's coming to us ever so slowly, but you can see it's rotating and coming at us. So smooth time, 2. There you go, going a little faster. I think if you get away, you'll stop. Yeah, maybe not. Any other questions about that? Oh, because I didn't put that script on the spawner or on the enemy, the other enemies, pretty much. So in order for that, for all the other ones to have it, you need to add the component into it. Let me try it again, because I couldn't get it working on prefabs the last time for some reason. Yeah, see, it's not showing up the player once I've added this script. Oh, maybe I have to open the prefab. Is it there? Let me see. Interesting. Sees itself, but it doesn't see player. Yeah, I think it's something to do with it being a prefab of some sort. But I wonder if we just remove it and create it again. We're going to delete those. Rename this 1. Okay. Maybe it's because I was doing it on a variant, but we'll see. Okay. So the spawner should still have 1 or 2. No. Enemy 1. Enemy 2. Let's give that a shot. There you go. Yeah, and you notice that one next over here. Oh, that's weird. Maybe it's only one of them is. I think it's because I made it a variant. Oh no, that one worked. So it's like at a certain distance, then they'll start coming after me. Fancy. Yeah. And you can see here in your hierarchy, all of these clones are being created. It's not spawned in yet. Yeah, that could be it. Existent. It might be it might be because I call this a variant rather than an actual new prefab. And just so that we can differentiate the two, let me create another material. We'll make that one like an orange. So we got that. Oh, interesting. It's actually one that's not doing it. Maybe we didn't give that the script. Oh, we didn't add the player to it. That one won't allow us to. Wait a minute. What is going on here? And mess around with this a bit. I don't have to create any material every time, and I'm not sure why I remove it every time I want to create a new thing. So, okay. This guy's gonna be red. We're gonna give it to enemy 1. Oh, you know what? Before I did that, still doesn't see it. Maybe I have to get in here. change if we gave a name range to the spawner and then call enemy by class. Jose, I'm not sure what you mean. Give a name range to the spawner. Call it by class. Yeah, because the spawner is looking for actual game objects. So I don't think you could. I mean, you probably have to change it if you wanted to use classes. I'm not confused by the question. Well, the class sets up all the settings and stuff for your game object. So your game object can just be this empty cube without anything on it. The class that you give it will give it the attributes, right? Because all Unity cares about are the objects that are within here. Yeah. I have to play around with it. I'm not sure why. Because it's straight up not seeing a player, even though it's in assets. It sees enemy 01, which is weird. It sees itself. That's it. It's something about it being a prefab that it doesn't like. Oh, sure. So again, here are the variables up top. The player that it's looking for, your walking distance, the smooth time, and the velocity. So it's going to be looking at the player and then calculating the distance between the enemy and the player position. If the distance that we calculated is less than the walking distance, which is this 10, then it'll move towards the player. So basically, there is an area of where the player needs to be in for it to basically start walking towards it. It's so weird. Okay, let's give that the material. Let's try that. It's just getting worse and worse. Anyone into the spawner and scratch the enemy component? No, because all this is doing is just spawning the enemy. Like if I put the enemy AI on the spawner, then the spawner box would actually be moving around and not the actual enemies. But anywho, I will post this up once I get it working, because I don't know, I think it's just being finicky. I'm gonna close it off here. Does anybody have any questions? So I don't believe we have any assignments or anything down the road. I really just want you guys to get started on your games, if you haven't started already. Is there anyone who doesn't know? It's for one. So the previous lecture is actually up online. I don't know if anybody saw it. If you go to the discussion forums, here, I'll look here. If you go to the discussion forums, this is probably where I'll post all the videos, and I'll post the projects and everything like that. But yeah, you go to week 6 lecture recording. I know it's kind of hidden, but you have to do full description, and then you can find it there. So, but yeah, I'll create another one for week 7 once everything's up. But yeah, their backlogs of classes. The thing is, I didn't have the pro version for so long that I couldn't record or upload anything. Well, yes and no. It's from World of Warcraft, but it was before League of Legends. I've had it forever. But yeah, I believe it's Gragas or someone similar. But yeah, is there anybody who has like no idea where to start or anything for their game? I want to make sure that everybody has some idea of where to start. Well, I'm gonna be here. So I'm just gonna stay here for a while, if you can consider it my office hours. So if you have any questions, if you want to direct message me or however you want to do it, or private message me, I'll be here to help anybody out who needs help. Okay. Real quick before everyone heads off, I just want to make sure I have everybody on attendance here. Stop the share real quick. No one's seen Talia, right? I haven't seen her in the chat. I don't see her. Yeah, she's got like this player controller, okay. Program. I don't know what system. Okay, that seems like a good start. So with your game, I mean, is there any battle mechanics that you need to work out? That'd be my only thing, is that you make sure that you have some your interactions with the player versus the enemies working correctly. Okay. But I mean, yeah, that looks like a good start. Did Nathan ever get into the chat? Yes. Yes, he did. I see you. Okay. Okie doke. I'm all set on attendance. I think I got everybody. So. Alrighty, like I said, I'll be online if anybody needs me. But that's all for the lecture for today. So, if you guys aren't sticking around, you have a good evening, and I will see you next week.